Oh, hey. Me and James here just got done watching Return to Silent Hill. What'd you think about it, James? Ah! Well, it couldn't have been that bad. Could it? Oh, and if you're wondering why Pyramid Head here has a little bit of a belly, well, let's just say I spent a little bit too much time with Eddie. Oh, man. That's good pizza. I will admit, when this movie was announced, my expectations were insanely low. The film was being directed by Christoph Gans, the same director as their first film, and to be honest, I've always hated that movie, ever since I saw it in theaters on that opening weekend in 2006. Now, I'm not saying you can't enjoy it. Art is subjective. Whatever you get out of it, it's entirely up to you. If you don't care about story and just want atmosphere and monsters for your adaptation, then you're probably okay with the 2006 film. But when it came to the story of Silent Hill 1, it changed everything. And this is important because the first thing I thought after walking out of the movie theater back in 2006 was that within the context of this film, creating a faithful adaptation of Silent Hill 2 was going to be impossible. Now, I know that a lot of people think that Silent Hill 2 is a standalone title in this franchise, and it kind of is, but this game also explores the aftermath of Silent Hill 1. The rules that the town follows in Silent Hill 2 are the results of a series of events explained in both Silent Hill 1 and Silent Hill 2. By the time they were writing that first movie, everything that Team Silent would have ever put out was already out there for them to reference. If it wasn't explained in Silent Hill 1, it was expanded on in Silent Hill 2, or recapped in 3, or expanded on again in 4, or fully explained in the Book of Lost Memories. It was an open book test, and they failed. For example, the first film never establishes Silent Hill as a resort town. There's never any mention of tourists, vacationers, or anything. Meaning this new film now needs to either change the vacation plot or retcon it in. Which they can't retcon it. In Silent Hill 1, things don't really go to hell until Cheryl arrives in town. After she was burnt, Alessa split herself into two to weaken the power she had so that Dahlia couldn't use it to pretty much bring upon the end times. For the next 7 years, while the cult held Alessa captive in the hospital basement, the town was still running like normal. This period was when James and Mary first visited Silent Hill for their vacation. This wasn't the case with the movie. The town was destroyed pretty much the day of Alessa's burning. Instead of Alessa having any power of her own, she's visited by the devil, who grants her revenge. So now in the movie, James and Mary can't visit this town because there's no town left to visit. And on top of that, was never a vacation spot to begin with. So now we have to give a new explanation as to why James is even coming to Silent Hill. Not to mention that the new film would also have to change any context surrounding the Lakeview Hotel, considering that's where James and Mary stayed for their vacation. And this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to what the first movie changed. In the game series, the town always had a power. The events of Silent Hill 1 just amplified it. Originally, the power was weak. What little we do know is that before the American settlers came, Silent Hill was a sacred land used by Native Americans. In Silent Hill 4, it's hinted that this place was used to commune with the dead, more specifically their ancestors. They use these large stones called Nakihona, or the Mother Stones, to speak with their family who passed. The Book of Lost Memories also mentions several times that the town's power is connected to memories. And once you become aware of this, a lot of the stuff in the games make a lot more sense as to why they are there. For example, Lisa has been dead like all the other townsfolk in Silent Hill 1. What Harry encounters is a memory of Lisa, a conscious manifestation with her memories and likeness. She acknowledges this herself before she turns. This same exact thing happens to Maria when she comes to terms with what she is, a memory of Mary. Not only is she manifested in the image of Mary, but she also gains her memories as the story progresses. Which reminds me, despite popular belief, the town doesn't just feed off of negative energy. Check this out. In the Baldwin mansion, Maria finds a stuffed bear. Upon examining it, she says, "I bet Laura would love it. She loves bears." Laura? Who am I talking about? In this moment, Maria pulled a positive memory that Mary had about Laura, most likely from their time together in the hospital. But better yet, once you're in the Brookhaven Hospital, what do you find Laura playing with? Stuffed teddy bears. Keep in mind that you don't find these stuffed bears anywhere else other than in the hospital. In fact, the puzzle you need to do to get the key to see Laura starts with the same stuffed bear. Boom. Positive manifestations. Laura sees bears because of a positive memory she had with Mary. But back on topic. These memories are tied to every form of manifestation, from the locations your character visits, their otherworld designs, and the monsters that inhabit them. They all mean something to someone in that story. But in the first Silent Hill movie, this entire concept is not present. It's been replaced with Alessa's rage, spawning darkness periodically for the sole purpose of trying to kill the members of the church. This change goes beyond simple stuff, like using James's monsters for somebody else and removing their meaning. Let me explain how deep this goes in the games with an example. In Midwich Elementary, the Otherworld uses the same wooden texture as Alessa's home that we see in her flashbacks. Simple enough, probably just resource saving, right? Throw in all the fencing and grating, now it makes it seem like she felt like a prisoner in her own home. In the employee lounge, those figures on the wall, someone else is wearing that same thing. But we'll get to that. Alessa was burnt in the basement of her home. The final boss is in the basement of the school. It's reported that the boiler exploded in the Gillespie house during Alessa's burning. To get to the final boss, you have to solve a boiler puzzle. Oh, and in the center of that boss battle, in the basement of the school, is that a person standing on fire in the middle of the arena? And what is that they're wearing? That same outfit from the employee lounge? Well, who else is wearing that? None other than Alessa at the end of the game, in her wheelchair, as Dahlia tries to perform a ritual on her daughter again. That's ceremonial wrapping. It all fits together. I know I sound like a crazy person, but this is how this stuff works in these games. You can find all of these connections to people's memories, and for some reason, no one ever talks about it. Maybe I should. But the film instead just turns the Otherworld into the Upside Down, a different reality that lives under the surface, and it's revealed by this paint-peeling effect. The Otherworld in the movie no longer means anything. It's just a nightmare world. Where in the games, each design element meant something specific to the memories of whoever manifested it. Not to mention that the movie now locks the Otherworld's switch strictly to this effect. When in the game, the transition was also just as unique as each Otherworld design. It could be a gradual decline into madness. It could change from room to room. You could be teleported. It could be the memory of a place that doesn't exist anymore. Hell, the entirety of Silent Hill 4 takes place inside of Walter's warped memories. This means that what's supposed to be significant for James in this movie, with the Otherworld designs, layout, and so on, it's going to be stuck using the same cliched peeling paint, red rusted metal, orange glowing lights. Oh wait, Silent Hill 2 Remake already did that for us. Thanks guys. That's a review for another day. I could stand here and rant about how much the first film changed all day, but I bring up these points specifically because these elements are kind of the driving force behind the story of Silent Hill 2. People love Silent Hill 2 because of the plot twist in its story, but that's all surface level. There's so much more underneath that makes everything work, and Christoph Gans removed all of that in 2006. Which now brings up the question, how did he handle this mess that he created? And is it any good? Well, oh man. I think Gans was trying to make this a standalone movie because nothing connects to the world in the first film at all. So I guess this is a reboot. If he wanted to separate this film from the mess he made in 2006, this would have been a great way to go about it. But instead of doing that, he goes right back and retreads so many elements from that first film. We have the falling ash from the first movie, but now it's not ash, it's from some other fire. We still have the same otherworld transition. They kind of play with the idea that there's multiple dimensions again. I mean, they mix in so many of these ill-timed flashbacks that one of them felt like he might just be experiencing all this in his head while he's in the hospital, which I don't know if that was intentional or just bad editing. We have another army of nurses scene, which I'll talk about later, and a finale with another lady in a floating hospital bed. But it's not as cool as this, or this. So, what does this film actually take from the game then? Well, this time around, Gans was able to retain all of our characters' first names. That's a plus. He also didn't cut any characters like last time. Everyone gets about a minute or two of screen time. No, seriously, the brand new characters for this story have more screen time than our original cast. Let's see. The path James takes in the movie follows the game somewhat. He goes from the bathroom at the Outlook, down the walking path in the woods, the cemetery where he talks to Angela, the underpass where he gets the radio, Woodside Apartments, Brookhaven Hospital, and then the Lakeview Hotel. And that's about it. So now, on to the changes. Where do I even start? Let's start with our characters. Mary specifically, since she's the driving force of this story. In this film, she was never married to James. She's just his girlfriend, or his ex, rather. Her late father was the leader of the town cult. Don't expect any explanations about this cult, because that's all we know. But this cult is obsessed with Mary. They give her potions, and then they eat her. Like, literally eat her. But she comes back okay after. So does she reincarnate, or does the cult turn into her? Speaking of which, this is the explanation for why Maria looks like Mary in this movie. Maria, Angela, and Laura are all versions of Mary, as the cult has this weird cannibalistic obsession with eating Mary. But also, this potion made her sick, and poisoned her. And that caused a plague in the town, which got everyone else sick, and made the monsters. I think. Laura is just a kid who runs around town, playing the role of the creepy horror movie kid. Eddie is a resident of the town. We see him in Woodside Apartments, and then he disappears for the rest of the film. Maria just shows up out of nowhere, and joins James at Rosewater Park. For the longest time, not only do they not acknowledge her resemblance to Mary, but she also doesn't even mention her name to James until late in the hospital, which we never see her again after. Angela has just a little bit more screen time than Eddie. She shows up in 2 or 3 small scenes, first in the cemetery as she's lining up sandbags along the shore, talking about a flood and a water treatment facility, or something. It's never brought back up again. There are hints at her abuse from the game, but it was so nonsensical that I couldn't even tell what they were trying to tell us with it. Yes, Abstract Daddy is in it briefly, but this version of Angela is Mary, so this version of Abstract Daddy is also partly Mary. The movie doesn't explain any of this. And lastly, we got our boy James. Occupation? Painter. Somehow that's enough to afford a drinking habit, a fancy 2010 Mustang convertible, a nice big studio apartment, and probably the most expensive thing of all, a therapist. As for the plot of this train wreck, James gets a letter from his ex-girlfriend saying that something terrible happened and he needs to come back. Through James's travels, we see a bunch of flashbacks that he met Mary in Silent Hill. They started dating and moved in together at the Woodside Apartments. However, James started noticing some weird shenanigans and finds out that Mary's involved with a cult. A cult that worshipped her dad, and now they worship her too. James said enough was enough, and that he was leaving Silent Hill and Mary needs to come with him. But Mary refuses, and she stays with her cult. We also don't learn anything about this letter. Who sent it, where it came from, how it got to him. Was it delivered by Mary? Was she the mailman? She's everyone else in this movie, apparently. So our boy drives to Silent Hill and begins his journey. He meets Mary Angela in the cemetery. He makes his way to the underpass, talks to a homeless guy, takes the homeless guy's radio, and this is when we have our first Otherworld shift. He then runs around in first-person mode in some PS2 CGI graphics. This leads James to seek refuge in the Woodside Apartments. Eddie apparently lives in these apartments, but doesn't know James from when he lived there. Maybe Eddie is another version of James, for all we know. And this is when we finally meet the big man. I'll admit, his new design is a hell of a lot better than it was in the last two movies, but they do nothing with him. He has like 3 scenes, and they're all hilarious. Our introduction has him appear behind the bars in the hall. And I kid you not, he tries to use his helmet like a battering ram, grunting the whole time. And it works. There are no mannequin monsters in the movie. Instead, a normal mannequin that also looks like Mary? Mary Mannequin? So Mary Mannequin turns into a giant spider, and James gets chased by Spider Mary Mannequin. This is where we get kind of a recreation of the closet scene from the game. James hides in a closet, and before Spider Mary Mannequin can attack, in comes Pyramid Head to save the day. Grunting profusely, he picks up Spider Mary Mannequin and slams her on the table, and begins to punch Spider Mary Mannequin. After he's done beating up Spider Mary Mannequin, he then confronts James in the closet. Pyramid Head gets ready to use his helmet like a battering ram again, but James's radio goes off, and him and Pyramid Head have a shared migraine, and the world turns back. From here, James leaves the apartments, and not much happens for a bit. He sees Laura on a ledge, and Laura gives him a trust fall. This was the first audible laugh we had in our audience. It was edited so fast, it seems like James wasn't gonna catch her. Bye-bye. James then chases her around Rosewater Park until he runs into Maria. No mention of her looking like Mary, no exchange of names. Just a, hey, you're not messed up, we gotta get out of here kind of conversation. Somehow, they determine that Mary is in the hospital, so they go there to rescue her. Again, there's another Otherworld shift, and James and Maria are confronted with an entire dance squad of nurses. And out of nowhere, one of them hits the drums, and the army of nurses are brought to life through the power of music. Anyway, after all that hospital junk, James and Maria work their way to the hospital basement. we're gonna have that iconic basement scene. Yeah! For some reason though, the hospital basement is an art gallery, full of James's paintings. And this is when James has a realization. He controls the other world, and Maria is only slowing him down. So he uses his super Silent Hill powers and spawns Pyramid Head to kill Maria. Then James magically teleports all the way to the Lakeview Hotel. This place holds absolutely no significance for James or Mary in this story. But it's on fire, so James goes running in. He meets Laura again for the last time, who tells him that he needs to accept what we are, meaning all of the Marys. I guess they're all a hive mind now? I have no idea, but Laura's face turns into Mary. James then goes upstairs and runs into Mary Angela. She's on a bed saying that he still has a hold of her, and she sinks into the bed and James tries to pull her out, but he gets sucked in too. And we end up in Angela's other world. Which is weird because again, why are all these characters Mary? The film doesn't dive much into Angela at this point, so who is she referring to? This film isn't here to explain the traumas of our cast of characters like in the game, so what is this here for? Well, that doesn't matter, because now that James is in the flesh room, he sees the abstract daddy monster. But it also has Mary's face? Is it Abstract Angela? Abstract Mary? James walks over to Abstract Mary Angela Daddy and holds its head. And I honestly forgot. But he's back in the burning hallway and working his way to the rooftop of the hotel. Because Christoph Gans made notes of these locations, and damn it, James has to follow these locations even if there's no rhyme or reason for any of these actions. Because seriously, why is James even here? This place has no meaning to him or Mary in this movie. On the roof, everything is on fire, except for a bed. The bed floats in the air, and in it, the ultimate Mary. Zombie Mary. James then uses his Silent Hill superpowers to fly up to Zombie Mary, where he has his last flashback. James did come back to Silent Hill, but the cult's poison has taken its toll on Mary. That or she's been cannibalized too many times. Or was it the poison? But she comes back after they eat her, but the cult members also turn into her. So what's killing Mary now? Just the potion she was drinking? Anyway, she asks for it to end. James takes out a rag and literally shoves it down her mouth. Our theater literally busted up into laughter at this point. The flashback ends, and James is leaving town with Zombie Mary's body. And drives his car into the lake. And all of a sudden, the movie starts over. James meets Mary for the first time, he picks her up, and they leave Silent Hill. So I guess not only can James transform the town, spawn a pyramid head, but he can also time travel. This movie made no sense. I don't know how you can take a story that deals with multiple serious topics and turn it into something like this. Being in the fan base for 25 years now, I've seen so many fans in the community come forward and say how they can relate to this story because they've dealt with a terminal illness in their family. Watching a disease take away someone they care about, watching them lose their will to this spontaneous inevitability, they get angry at this unfair situation, they get depressed, It's a complex cluster of emotions. The anger and jealousy of those standing around them who are still healthy and get to keep on living, and the sadness of being a burden. And at the same time, their families watching their loved one slowly being taken away. The financial burden becomes too much. Their own life has to come to a stop, and it becomes too much for them as well. And in the back of their mind, behind the stress of it all, they wish this would just end already. At first, they say they wish it for the sake of their loved one, but deep down, they also feel it for themselves, and feel awful for that selfishness. It's such a complex situation. But instead, this movie goes, that's too complicated. Let's just remove all those concepts by making it the fault of an evil cult. And for funsies, let's give our protagonist superpowers. That's not even mentioning how poorly this film handles our supporting characters who are dealing with their own equally complex issues. And I know, I've read that Gans complained about studio interference, just like with the first film, but the changes they wanted had nothing to do with this plot. This was all his writing. Like, supposedly Angela's backstory from the game was supposed to be mixed in with Mary's story, and the baby monster that Laurie carries around in this movie was supposed to be from Mary getting pregnant when she was young. There was a lot left in the cutting room floor to shorten this film. Gans did say that there was a director's cut that's longer, and while it would have made this story make more sense, this new story would still be dumb and overall worse than the source material regardless. This movie was just bad, and not even in a fun way. I can't even properly nitpick this thing because it strays so far from the source material. To make any comparisons, I would need to sit here and lay out the entire story of Silent Hill 2 in detail just to explain the differences. Like this scene here with the dead James in front of the TV. That's meant to foreshadow the VHS tape at the end of the game, but Gans got rid of that scene from the game. So now instead, this TV has a bunch of VHS tapes of all the times this cult ate Mary. Again, seriously, what even is this all about? The cult ate Mary, and then they started turning into Mary? Just, what? Honestly, I think the weird overarching story in my Pyramid Head cosplay build series was more coherent, and probably more faithful. And I intentionally took that thing off the rails. It just kinda sucks to see another opportunity wasted. This is the third strike for this franchise, in my opinion. I don't see your average film audience wanting to see another one of these again, even if a competent director wanted to reboot the film franchise into something faithful. No producer would greenlight it, or at least not with the budget that it would need. And I can already hear the usual criticism. You're just being ungrateful. You should be happy we got anything at all. No, I actually do appreciate the work and artistry put into these films. The cast and crew worked their butt off on something that they seemed passionate about. Plus, it looks like they had a lot of fun doing it too. And as a creative myself, I feel especially bad for them because of all that work that went into portraying a script that only had a fraction of the effort. Well, you can't just have a one-to-one adaptation. That would be boring. Having a character walking around for 2 hours, things need to change. Look, I completely understand that in a film adaptation, things need to change. The language of film is very different than, say, a book or a video game. A book can take its time and tell you exactly what a character is thinking at any given moment. But in a film, they need to visually convey that thought without breaking the pacing of the film. With a game adaptation, I know we can't have James going around town reading notes and memos and just solving puzzles throughout the entire film. A lot of that stuff would need to be cut, even though it makes up the bulk of the gameplay. But in this series, because of how the town of Silent Hill manifests things for our characters, a lot of those things have meaning, even if your average player isn't aware of it. So just like when adapting someone's thoughts in a scene from a book, you can also apply the subtext of these notes and puzzles through other means in film. You have to break down why these puzzles are important to these characters and why they're there. What does this obstacle say? Why is this location important? Why are these things happening here? For example, Let's go back to Brookhaven Hospital and talk about these bears again. Let's break this puzzle down real quick and see what we can learn from it. When James examines the first bear, he pricks himself and pulls out a needle, a sewing needle to be specific. How do we know it's a sewing needle? Because it's used later with a strand of hair. The hair's threaded through the needle, and the needle is used like a fishing hook to obtain an elevator key from a drain. That elevator key leads us to Laura. So what can we learn from this supposedly random series of items and events? Well, first, why is James even in Brookhaven Hospital? This wasn't his location of choice. It was Laura's. Just like James, Laura is also looking for Mary. From her point of view, she only knows Mary from the hospital. If I remember right, Laura was an orphan, and the orphanage would occasionally bring the kids to the hospital that Mary was staying at to see the patients. This was how Mary and Laura bonded. Brookhaven Hospital isn't James's area, it's Laura's. All the things that James sees here are relevant to either her or Mary. These aren't James's memories, it's theirs. Now that we're building context, things start making sense. Things like Maria getting sick is her being influenced by that memory of Mary. She blames being sick on a hangover, probably the same way Mary first dismissed being sick before they knew she was terminally ill. Then out of nowhere, Maria has a bunch of pills. She's mirroring Mary. When James more or less abandons Maria for a bit, and they find each other in the basement, when Maria scolds him, whiplashing back and forth between emotions.
Anyway! What do you mean, anyway? You don't sound very happy to see me. Don't ever leave me alone. You're supposed to take care of me.
It's a mirror of how Mary talked to James in the hospital. You hear the same thing towards the end of the game, as James hears a memory of one of those moments.
Are you still here? I told you to go. Are you deaf? Don't come back. James, wait. Please don't go. Stay with me. Don't leave me alone. I didn't mean what I said. Please, James. Tell me I'll be okay. Tell me I'm not going to die.
As for the elements of this puzzle, James pricks himself with a sewing needle. What could this possibly mean? Well, if you look at the bear, you'll see that it looks hand-stitched, possibly from a pattern. Could Mary have sewn this for Laura? When we first find Mary's dress, we find it in a room full of sewing supplies. Like a sewing machine? Rolls of fabric? Was this a hobby that Mary had? It's also found conveniently in the women's locker room. Why is this important? Laura got her letter from Mary's nurse, Rachel.
But don't tell Rachel, okay?
Who's Rachel?
She was our nurse. I took it from her locker.
Somehow, this teddy bear, like Laura's letter, seems like it might be tied to Rachel, being in the nurse's locker room. Maybe it was meant to be given to Laura, like the letter, through Rachel. The hair in the puzzle being used in the hospital shower drain, I mean, that one's pretty simple. How many of us with long hair know what it's like to constantly fish our hair out of the shower drain? Given Mary's condition, and knowing what she looked like towards the end of her life, it's clear that she was losing a lot of her hair while in the hospital. This portion could be a memory of Mary's, being in the hospital, possibly in the shower, alone, watching her own body fall apart as she sees her hair fall out every day in the shower, be it from the disease or possibly the medication. There's so much more, but this is just a hint of what we can pull from all of this information that can now be implemented in other ways through film. And because of how the other world manifests these memories in abstract ways, you can get creative with how this information is displayed. You could preferably keep it as subtle for people to dig into, or make it a little bit more obvious, all while trying to tie it in to whatever obstacles James needs to overcome in this area, all while he's hunting down Laura to make sure she's safe.
I'm gonna go look for her. For Laura. I'll be back as soon as I can.
But you can't fit all that into 90 minutes. There's just so much stuff going on in every single zone of the game. Your movie would need to be hours long. Exactly. Video game movies have been notoriously bad for this very reason. Meanwhile, video game adaptations as a series have been doing surprisingly well lately. Well, you still couldn't fit everything in it. Your dumb teddy bears wouldn't make any sense without including Born from a Wish. How would you do that, huh? Put it first? That'd be easy. Check this out. Episode 1. James is our unreliable narrator, so we'll start it just like the game. No flashbacks, we're just taking his word. This episode would cover from the beginning of the game all the way to the underpass. This episode sets the tone and hints at the stakes. Episode 2, this is when James notices that the town kinda hasn't boxed in, and we see more monsters. The bulk of this episode would be in Woodside Apartments, as it seems to be the only way to Rosewater Park. This episode introduces us to our cast of characters and our threat. Also, setting up some foreshadowing for the plot twist. Episode 3, this would cover after the apartments, all the way to chasing Laura to Brookhaven. This episode would be a cool down episode. Lots of walking around, talking. This is the character development episode, especially for Maria, because we need to care about her for later. Episode 4, Brookhaven. This episode will cover the entire hospital scene. We get our subtle mirror of Mary and Laura's time together. This episode ends right at the basement chase, right after Pyramid Head kills Maria, and James is left alone in the elevator. This would act like a cliffhanger. Episode 5, Born from a Wish. The audience assumes Maria is dead, so this episode can play like a flashback. For new viewers, this will throw them for a loop, not knowing who or what Maria is yet. No hints yet as to her being a manifestation, but the parallels of Ernest and Amy Baldwin with James and Laura will be very apparent. We'll see Maria start to gain some memories of Mary about James and Laura.
That James. He's a bad man.
James. Yes. I know.
He's looking for the you that isn't you.
But to a new audience, they might think, oh, is she alive and has amnesia? What's going on? Until the end of the episode, where it leads right into the start where she runs into James at Rosewater. This episode would be difficult to pull off, to not spoil anything, and to throw new viewers in for a loop as to what's going on with her, but I think it's very doable. Then episode 6, back to James in the hospital elevator, and we're back on track. Okay, I get it, you made your point. Well, who wants to see the same story anyway? You can just play the game. Let me give people something new. You can give people something new whenever you want. You can make an all-new original movie without copying the name, or needing approval from someone who holds the rights to that property. Making something inspired by a pre-existing IP isn't illegal. You can make whatever you want and just call it something else. But then who would watch it? Exactly. Let's start wrapping up this video. I will say though, that people's reaction to this movie is the same as what I had back in 2006 when I saw the first one in theaters. Yes, it was a better made film, and it's slightly more coherent, but your average viewer of that film, especially back then, knew nothing of the source material. So they were able to go in and enjoy it on its own. And despite all the crap I give that movie, it did have a lot of cool moments. The first chunk of the film after entering the town was fairly faithful to the game in terms of locations and aesthetic, it felt like you were watching the game. But as someone who knew the story and lore, I hated everything outside of that, because it changed so much. Today, 20 years later, people are more aware of Silent Hill 2's story. I was expecting Gans to do the same thing again, but I knew the fan reaction would be worse, just because people knew the source material this time. So I guess maybe the only good thing that might come out of this is that maybe, just maybe, people will go back to the first film with a new lens and see it for what it is. Because it's the same thing. Silent Hill 1 has a great story, and the lore is so fascinating. It deserves so much better. And so does Silent Hill 2. And 3 for that matter. So, I guess with that, I'm gonna go back to my lair and get back to work on something more positive, like another project video. I'll see all of you in the next one.